Right. Everyone, and welcome to the webinar series. My name is Robin, and I'm the community coordinator on the unDavos core team, together with Mark and Dorothea. For those of you that are new to Davos, Davos is a community-driven unconference that runs in Davos alongside the World Economic Forum. Our purpose is to give everyone a stage to democratize, humanize, and bring action to Davos. Our new webinar series aims to continue the conversation between summits by keeping the pulse alive year-round through bite-sized, high-energy sessions where our community, meaning you, turn ideas into action. We recorded all the content from the 70+ panels during unDavos 2025 on YouTube and podcast, so we highly recommend you to check out all the incredible ideas that we share there. Also follow us on LinkedIn and our Luma calendar, I'm going to share the link in the chat now, for monthly updates as we journey together towards Davos 2026. As Davos is a community-driven summit, meaning we make ready the stage and you host the session. So if you want to host a session online, apply to host a webinar either by scanning the QR code or the webinar application link in the chat. A few Zoom guidelines before we jump into the session. We recommend everyone to turn on their cameras so that we can see each other across the globe. Also use the chat to ask questions or connect with others during the session. Feel free to share what you're doing, invite others for conversation, and more. During the session, you can use the hands function if you want to ask a question or share something. We encourage everyone to keep the energy visible by using reactions during the sessions. Lastly, this session will be recorded and streamed to YouTube and podcasts. Today, we are joined by Mo Hamzian. He's a transformative leader who scaled companies across real estate, tech, and finance by clearing systemic barriers to human potential. Together, we'll explore how bridging the digital and physical divide can unlock flow states, smarter spaces, and a new paradigm for productivity and human thriving. Welcome, Mo. The stage is yours.
Thanks very much, Robin. I want to share my screen. Hopefully we can see it. I'm very excited to be talking about this topic, very close to my heart, really topical, and it's a great time to be a human right now. So let's dive in. This presentation is something that hopefully will kindle some ideas about how you see physical spaces and our potential as humans. So the AI city, I think if branding expert had their way, they would probably call it the smart city. I think valuable, given that AI is so topical, to refer to it as that. If a city was called the AI city, I probably wouldn't want to live in it myself. I would want it to be branded something else. We were talking just before the webinar started with Robin of how do you differentiate right now as a human being, given that there is so much generative intelligence out there. And one of those things is just asking better questions. So here's a question for everyone to make us think, right? What if cities weren't just built for efficiency, but for you? And what if every building, every street corner, every shared space could anticipate your needs, adjust your presence, and even help you become better? What if you didn't inherit your physical environments and you had some personalization, curation? You definitely have some personalization and curation and say about pretty much every other product cycle in your life that's in the cloud or in your pocket. But physical spaces haven't really caught up, which is a huge opportunity for everyone. The noise in the background is by design. It's there to stress you and annoy you. There are 27 billion IoT devices humming right now in cities. They're creating a new nervous system for urban life. This is not a scene out of Minority Report. There are smart cities being delivered right now. So Toyota's Woven City in Mount Fuji is one. Self-driving robots, vehicles, really smart infrastructure. So I think the way we're going to live in cities is going to change. Just quickly about me, I'm hugely mission driven. Everyone who knows me that I'm a missionary, I'm not a mercenary. And my core belief is that humans can really become better at being human. How do we do that? Everyone has their own lens, their own vision on it. For me, my mission is really simple. I want to create environments that think and care, spaces that not only work for us, but elevate us, help us thrive. I'm the CEO of Val. We create AI-powered spaces that merge human performance and urban intelligence. I'll share some snippets of what we're doing with you. But let's start with a legacy city and really understand why cities are failing us and how we can configure them to become a little bit better for us. Today's cities are outdated. They are closer to what we had in the Industrial Revolution than cities we need today. They're definitely analog, where everything else in the world is fairly digital and intelligent. Cities are reactive when they need to be predictive. And they're static when our lives are anything but. I think we're kinetic human beings. We are people who are really mobile, but our cities are not. Most real estate was built for a different era. One where work was fixed and mobility was low, and technology barely touched the built environment. And when you combine this to some sociological points of view, it blows your mind. It blew my mind. The world's population 500,000 years ago was 10,000 people. It took 500,000 years to get to 1 billion people around the time of the Industrial Revolution. We went from 1 billion to 2 billion in 200 years around World War II. We've gone from 2 billion to 8 billion in 100 years. And if pronatalists have their way, a neutral statement, if they have their way, we'd be at 20 billion by the turn of the century. Now combine this with another fact. There are some futurists claiming that people who are going to live to 1,000 years have already been born. Some of that is tongue-in-cheek, but the point is we're going to live longer. So more people live longer in legacy real estate, a recipe for change. So today's cities are outdated. My lens and my company's lens is from the lens of the workforce. And these data are US data, but I think the topography probably translates across jurisdiction, across the world. So 170 million people in the US workforce, 100 million in the US are no longer operating traditional offices. It's just before the webinar started, Rob and I were talking whether he's based in Norway, whether there's a bank holiday in Norway. And he said, look, Mo, I've been freelancing for such a long time that public holidays don't have the same connotation. It was a mind-blowing moment for me. So flex employees or flex workers even see public holidays differently. And public holidays are a legacy inclusion in our systems, right? So when you think about the difference between employed freelance, employed independent contractor, and by the way, Google has 3 times more independent contractors, full-time independent contractors than full-time employees. So then you start thinking, what happens to traditional real estate and the market size associated with it from a workforce point of view? So we see it's a broken system. The commutes are designed around inefficiency, and most people don't want to commute. Although, if you're no longer commuting to a nervous infrastructure called real estate, then there are some decays. We'll talk about that. One of those, just to give you a hint, is a cultural decay. If we're no longer tribal, i.e. a couple of 100,000 people aren't commuting on a daily basis to work and back home, then there is a degradation in that cultural connection to your employer and the sense of belonging. So then there's a spillage into environments that were never designed for productivity because the office was designed for productivity. And this is just one aspect of real estate. So then people are going into cafes that were designed to sell you drinks and not necessarily substitute as a workplace. And then there is that hemorrhaging of real estate itself, which is offices. And that's really been impacted through COVID. The softer side, the human side, is that slow erosion of dignity, clarity, and connection, which is so important because ultimately we are humans, we're emotional beings. Because of that fragmentation, dispersion, decentralization, real estate being disrupted, accelerated by COVID, our performance suffers. Physical beings operate in physical environments. As much as tech companies want you to live in your pocket, live in your phone, live in the cloud, there is a conflict because we live in physical environments. So that integration happened over time. How do we think about AI and robotics, and what happens when spaces start thinking for you and being smarter? Artificial intelligence has a very native, tacit way of converting data into real-time decisions. Robots, and by robots, devices, can convert those decisions into actions. Let me pause for a second, talk about decision making. We were talking again with Robin. Human beings make around 14 million conscious decisions every year. A conscious decision is, do I put on my red shoes or my black shoes? Should I have coffee or tea this morning? Anything that's non-reflex, blinking your eyes, is a physiological decision that's not part of that 14 million. Nowhere in education are you taught the science of decision making. It's highly statistical. There are lots of algorithms to decisions. And by the way, I don't think you're making any decisions that haven't been made before. Very few of us. I think the standard deviation of human beings, we are making decisions that have already been made before us by others that are alive now or our predecessors. And there is some amazing data sets associated with it. So I think right now I'm stating the obvious, and that's why AI and the generative AI is becoming so valuable because of that data set. But then the next bastion of change is how it translates that data into physical action. And that's what we want to explore today. So then these two environments converge. By these environments, the intelligence of the digital and the analog of the physical, when they converge, that category, by the way, is called phygital, that in between physical and digital. Then some magic, truly magic, can happen. And magic, it can save us time, elevate, it can help us become better at being humans because we're no longer vacuuming because a robot is doing it, and that has been in the market and it's just getting better and better. So then traffic lights can adjust in real time. That's a really good example. Your HVAC can manage your air quality. Cleaning robots and sanitization can happen without a human interface. And we can have a personalized digital layer in airports, malls, and campuses. One of the things that I'm always surprised by is how much you inherit everything that's given to you in the physical space and how okay you are with it. Actually, your expectation isn't that, oh, I want some autonomy over the temperature of this space or control over the air quality. Or wouldn't it be wonderful if there was some lavender scent following me around in the airport? Or would it be clever if the airport knew what my connection was so I don't have to be sprinting to the next check-in desk? And where is my luggage? So these are all things that may not set your hair on fire. I think one of the things that you're taught at business school is make sure it's a pain point, not an itch, but death by 1,000 paper cuts. I think if you have enough itches, you could go mad and eventually your hair will be on fire. So I think over time, there will be micro adjustments in real estate. Some of them will be wholesale and some of them will be almost home runs that you realize how much change has come into our lives. Tesla, as popular or unpopular Musk may be at the moment, took a legacy industry and made it much more intelligent and created a fantastic digital product called the Tesla cars and lots of other models. So let's dive a little bit deeper. Spatial intelligence is the nervous system of the city. Think of it as a platform layer, connecting people, devices, and architect to dynamically optimize for energy, flow, and experience. And that could happen now. It's almost like every building could have its own operating system. They call that digital twins, where you have a replica of the physical environments. You can map infrastructure over it and have control over infrastructure over it. The civil society has that in transport systems, but private sector is really truly catching up with it. So there are over 5,600 digital twins companies working on those solutions, and it's growing at a 20%. I think that's going to be much more incorporated in everyday life, whether it's residential or commercial environments. And we are thinking about it within our own business model, which is that kind of flexible work environment. What if there was a connection between employer, employee, and real estate? How would that symbiotic relationship change? So about Val and the company we're building AI-powered micro work cafes. Think of it as Starbucks and WeWork get married, they have a love child. The love child is super bright. It's operated by AI, robots, and a human delivers the experience. One of the things we found earlier on, giving you this not to plug the company, but rather our learning through it. One of the things we found earlier on was that we were really limited when we were building real estate or product in typical construction methods on site with general contractors. Hugely limiting for a variety of reasons. Once we realized we could build the product, and not all products can be, but our product can. Once we realized we can build the product in factory, amazing, wonderful things happened. And I think given that real estate has so much encumbrance, it's physical, it's legacy, it's tough to change, it's immobile, it's expensive, it's high capex, it's got convoluted funding mechanisms where returns are being amortized over 20, 30 years. It's tough to change that. So how do you change it? The best way to change is to augment it, is to superimpose layers over it. And those are through a variety of IoT devices that can become intelligent. And that can be done retrospectively. Vel is a retrospective product, or it can be done during its construction. So 5 urban shifts driven by AI and robotics. There are more, but these are the ones I wanted to highlight. I think infrastructure to intelligence, that's this idea of utilities, energy grids, and transit becoming adaptive. And you're seeing that already behind the scenes. This digital twin forecasting demand spikes and energy use, efficiency, amazing for environment. Lots of companies are thinking about that right now. Government is thinking about that right now. Huge amounts of data there, particularly given that through this AI revolution that's happening, we just need a lot more power, 6 times more power than we have right now. How do you deliver that? Is it micro? Is it wholesale? Is it on-site? Is it off-site? How do you manage that demand? And then what's its impact on the private sector? Is your house energy prices going to go up? And is that fair? Then there's this kind of transaction to experience. Real estate becomes hospitality. It has become hospitality to some extent. Rooms and lobbies, personalized lighting, temperature, acoustics to individual preferences. There are 2 points here. One is this utility functional improvement through benefits and features. If it can be done, we should do it. The second component of that is remaining relevant, particularly in retail and hospitality. We all know that online shopping has, to a large degree, damaged street retail, brick and mortar shopping. So people have adapted. Malls have adapted. Smart retailers have adapted. And that is delivering experience. And hospitality is at the heart of experience. We've seen that successful. Just one example, in the US, it's been a flight for quality, and the ones that are succeeding are really succeeding. The ones that are thriving are really thriving. The A-grade malls in good cities, let me give you an example. Tyson's Corner is a big mall in DC, and it gets 15 million people a year. That's incredible. Apple Store, put it in comparison, when I found out this data, it blew my mind. A typical Apple Store in the US generates $50 million of revenue a year. Let's say an average check value in an Apple Store, I don't know, it's $1,000. So 50 million divided by 1,000 is 50,000. That's enormous, that level of throughput. And how have they realized that? They started delivering experience. Tyson's Corner has sip and walk policies. In the US, in some states, it's very clever, backdoor exercises that real estate operators are using. In some states, you can't walk around with a glass of alcohol in the streets. It's illegal. But within the mall, they've got a special permit, which means you can walk around with a glass of martini or open can of beer and actually have an experience in the mall itself. And that's a very clever way of real estate becoming hospitality. Because now in all of DC, you can't do that. But if you want to have a date night, have a meal, have a drink, and go shopping and still have alcohol in your hand, the only place you could do that is Tyson's Corner. So that's a very clever way of that example. Then there's this kind of very rudimentary idea of maintenance to automations. Drones, cleaning, high rises, delivering parcels, autonomous shuttles, micro-mobility. I think Riverside, California's pilot for automated electric shuttles is a good example. Toyota's Woven City are early examples, and we're seeing that. There are lots of things to overcome. Governance, integration, complicated real estate management systems, consumers' behavior. That's a really difficult one, actually. A switching cost. Anecdotal piece of data. I used to live in England. Speaking to the consumer's behavior of switching costs and how difficult it is to take consumer to change their behavior and educating them to do something different. And that's why Apple was so successful. It didn't spend all that money changing behavior. Others did, and it came in with a very good replicator of something already in the market and did well. In England, you're twice more likely to get divorced than to switch your bank account. Like, how insane is that? And that's really valuable. So if you're trying to start a new credit card or a new bank account, good luck. How are you going to do that? The question is, how do you slipstream to existing behavior? That's the point in the early days. So some of these points that are coming up, we need to make sure as investors, as developers, as product leaders, is to ease the customer into it. Personalization is huge. Space is learning your preferences. McDonald's recognizes you've arrived and starts making the food. That's really important for the space to be able to speak to you. You go into an environment and the space recognizes, whether it's Lululemon or Nike or Starbucks, recognizes you've been there before and engages with you. Whether that's through your app or voice, it creates a personalized journey for you in ways it doesn't, simply by the fact these are really anecdotal, small, micro examples that are meaningless. But when you think about human beings' day is filled with hundreds of thousands of touch points. It's about alleviation and improvement of those touch points on a wholesale level. So when some brands can engage with you in a more intimate, collaborative, and personalized way through their real estate, they remain more competitive. But then this idea of disconnection and cohesion. Case studies. Val, we spoke about that. I won't go too much into it, but it's this idea of making sure we can deliver focus and productivity. One of the products we're developing, we're about a year away from it. And I will touch on it because it's important. I think physical environments can help. Sovereign spaces and places where you have neurosafety. Unless you live alone, there are very few neurosafe environments in your life. Probably two. One is the bathroom, where you feel no one wants anything from you and you can really press pause. There's a famous Adam Sandler movie called Click. He found the remote, he can pause life, he can rewind life, and he can fast forward life. But the pause one was magic. And it's like, how can technology and space help you pause life? And you must create spaces to do that. And the other sovereign environment is your car. where it's your belonging and you feel safe in it. Outside of that, even in your home, in public environments, there aren't that many neuro-safe places. So one of the things we're exploring is how do we create neuro-privacy and neuro-safety and neuro-performance in volatile environments or hostile environments. I would argue that airports are hostile environments. One of the things we're exploring, which is fascinating. Toyota's Woven City is incredible, 175 acres, a living laboratory where residents will live among pet robots, drones, and self-driving vehicles. It's a real city built to test how AI and robotics integrate into daily life. It's so sustainable that it's definitely on my bucket list to go and experience. I urge everyone to look it up if you're not familiar with it. Then there's this idea of smart furniture. I talked about physical real estate is difficult to change. A lot of stakeholders, complicated funding scenarios. So how do you improve its value, not just financial value, but product value? One way to do that, integrating smartification into it. One example is this company, Newts, that is improving furniture by making them have micro power, secure Wi-Fi, ambient lighting, engaging with that seat, whether in an office or in a mall, you have some level of customization, care and attention given to you. So let's dive into some of the economics. I think real estate is depreciating from a product and brick and mortar point of view. Obviously, its value could go up, but not all real estate's value go up over time. And in the US, legacy real estate is depreciating at a value by 2030 is forecasted to be 26% less valuable commercial real estate than it is today. Obviously, there's a flight for quality, but we're talking about an aggregated level. Smart AI enabled real estate can become an appreciating asset, whereby you get higher occupancy, you get premium subscription layers, you get integrated commerce and services and data yield per square feet. All of this to improve users' journey. And it can become a revenue platform. One thing to note here is cross-utilization of real estate, which is a phenomenal thing that's been going on. I used to live in England, particularly in London. The municipality decided that its police stations were more valuable if they were sold. Like, how fewer people going into the police station, should we keep them, should we not keep them? And so they started selling police stations to developers. And developers turned them into townhouses or apartments. But then you had fewer police stations. And they said most people who go into a police station in London are to report a petty crime. Let's try and do most of that online or over the phone, but some people still need to do it. So they put micro police stations in large grocery stores. So they said, you can go and do your shopping and report a crime at the same time. So it's this kind of like smart way of cross-utilizing real estate. And I think we have to start thinking about how do we make real estate more relevant today, whether it's commercial real estate or even residential environments. It could be that real estate, in the same way that you subscribe to a technology partner, you may subscribe to Zoom because you're a power user. You have lots of apps in your life that you subscribe to because the free version is no longer good enough for you. It could be a case that you should subscribe to the building itself. Whether you're renting a building or you're bought something in a building, or whether you are a frequent visitor of a large environment like a train station, if spaces become smart enough where it can give you customization, then it can monetize through a subscription layer to give you that personalization, because that personalization can either save you time, it can enhance your flow, it can get you there faster. And in fact, that's something that we do at Val. We have a subscription layer in our product that gives you all of that. But that's something real estate operators can think about. The market is growing. This is the US numbers. It's going from 950 to 2 trillion in the next 4 or 5 years. There are about 9,700 companies in this kind of smart real estate, smart physical The next number is global. It's about 700,000 people employed in these startups and companies doing that. 35,000 patents, 1,000 have been granted, and it's growing at a 24% on an annual basis. Right now, there's a lot of noise. Now, I think noise has a negative connotation. It's a neutral statement, but there's a lot of fuss at the moment about AI. And rightly, it's changing our lives. We're at a really interesting precipice. In 2018-19, there wasn't that level of buzz, even though a lot of the AI platforms that exist today and the AI leaders, the journey started in 2012, 2013, the days of IBM Watson. Today, they've become rock stars because their product is just magical. The last bastion of development will be the integration of everything that's intelligent into the physical environment. So the people who are thinking about how do we make physical environments smarter, how do we cross that chasm today, are going to be really celebrated in 5 years' time. So if you're a startup today, in 5 years, you should be at your Series B, maybe? Just aggregated roadmap of a company. Maybe you would have sold by then, but if you're starting today and you're a Series B in 5 years' time, you are in a perfectly poised environment to have a fundamentally good raise and really change the world from 2030 to 2035 because you started thinking about it today. And it's one of those sectors that's definitely growing. Capital is flowing into it. Average round for these kind of businesses around $15 million. $1 billion plus has been invested by leaders into it. There are 3,330 active investors across mobility, utilities, and real estate. There are 27 billion IoT devices right now, which is mind-blowing. If you're a real estate developer, retrofitting buildings is one way to think about it. How do you augment the building? How do you make intelligent ecosystems, partnering up with operating systems that do that, leveraging digital twins to optimize energy and space? Even if it means understanding how people behave through heat maps, how people behave in real estate, just makes you build better design. Offer subscription-based workspace packages. And I think if you're a real estate developer, even on the residential side, you build smarter units that are greener, more sustainable, more intelligent, can augment and improve your life through security, through well-being, then I think you can charge more for it. Again, really simple example. I travel a lot for work. Hotels are now doing Peloton rooms. They put a Peloton bike or a Peloton treadmill in the room, and they charge slightly more for it. Because of that, they charge $15, $20 a night for it. It's not for everyone, but it speaks very honestly about a subset of the demographic who say, yeah, okay, there's an added benefit here that I want to use. Peloton is a very good example of a phygital experience. It's one of the pioneers of a phygital experience, where it took a legacy industry of just exercise and added a dimension of cloud to it. It was very hard for them to be successful, but they did it. Hospitality brands, I think this is something that's really important, is merging that digital intuition with that physical presence. Check-ins that recognize guests. Obviously, there's some privacy settings, you have to give it permission. But hotels and hospitality have a mandate to improve your experience. You could argue that the employer doesn't have a mandate to improve your experience, your physical experience. I think they do through their culture, but hospitality brands definitely have that mandate. And they can create rooms right now that can anticipate preferences. And our AI-powered concierge bots, personalized itineraries, etc. I think one of the reasons they're not doing it, and people haven't caught on, to some extent, is the curse of the incumbent. I think leaders settle in, and it's hard to integrate when you're the size of Marriott, for instance. Marriott is doing a great job, by the way, but let's say the size of Marriott, it's hard to integrate it. And that's why Airbnb in 2013, 14, says, you know what, we're going to disrupt how people think about accommodation altogether. And I think that disruption is coming for real estate as well. There's your responsibility and my responsibility. Jobs always said it best. Never ask the consumer what they want because they don't know They will tell you something that's already in the market. What was your expectation before the Apple iPhone came along? You're perfectly happy with Nokia or a BlackBerry until it came along. And I think the human expectations going to change over time. And to some extent, that's connected to the switching costs. They finance and law firms use spatial AI to secure offices, optimize hybrid work, personalized client experience. One of the things we found is creating secure environments where doctors, lawyers, government contractors can work safely on a pay-as-you-go hourly basis, because private space doesn't really exist on a pay-as-you-go basis in the world as we know it. So how do you create that and add that level of governance and security that's required? I was at a seminar in San Francisco recently. A clever guy runs the Chamber of Commerce of Brooklyn, a district in New York, which, by the way, rivals some in terms of its revenue and its size. And they're really thinking about it. They're thinking about it from 3 points: transport, security, and housing. A phygital startup, if you're a startup that is thinking about smartification, incorporating digital into physical, and you want to work with governments, I would say a lot of governments are thinking about it in the same way. They're thinking about it from this idea of transit, transport, congestion, safety of transport. Then security point of view, and then thinking about it from a housing. Those are fundamental things that are thinking about that, some better than others. I think some countries are doing that really well when it comes to sharing the road with multiple people on it. So cities aren't just structure. There are environments that shape how we think, feel, and live. It impacts us in many ways. Beneath the technology lies a moral imperative to restore sovereignty over our environment. Whether you are disabled or have a disability, whether you are asthmatic, whether pollution impacts you, whether your idea of privacy and your area around you is different to others, what happens in Russia. I think there are some things that could bring that level of dignity back to human beings. And through good design, we can have that. And some places do that really well. A good example of how space and real estate can design your behavior is a casino. So Vegas, they do this incredibly well and they're known for it. They make it very difficult for you to find the exit, just by design, because they don't want you to leave. So once you're in, they have to comply with safety and health code, all that stuff because of fire. But once you're in, it's very hard to find the main entrance out of there. And they pump oxygen to make you really alert. And they sensationalize through good real estate design. And then the antithesis of that are airports where just they think about security. And now consumer experience. The point I'm trying to make is physical environments have a direct impact on your well-being, on your mindset. So what we're really building isn't technology, it's dignity. Intelligent spaces should give you back that clarity and not increase surveillance or biases. I think physical environments and technology connected can improve and foster human connection. Breakdown of community and disassociation from each other. Lots of companies are trying to do that, but those companies are mainly digital and they haven't crossed the chasm. I cannot wait to see one of these tech giants, LinkedIn, Facebook, Microsoft, become physical products. So I can engage with them, so they can get to know me better, so they can deliver, because I trust them implicitly. I trust Zoom, I trust Microsoft, I trust LinkedIn. I know what I'm getting. It'd be great to see those companies translated into physical environments. Some of them are thinking about it and doing it. So autonomy, connection, the chance to perform without friction, that's really important. The experience has two sides. What do you need to remove to give you a better experience? And what additives do you need to add to give you better experience? And the goal isn't to make cities sterile or robotic. Far from it. Is to create an environment that liberates our potential. And you do that by intervening physical environments, technology environments, coming together, intervening to let you just be a better version of a human being, so you don't have to think about certain things. this guy crossing the road, he can cross because there's good design. He doesn't have to think about it. He knows there's a pedestrian crossing. It's as simple as that. If that pedestrian crossing wasn't there, crossing roads in some countries is like bullfighting. It's really dangerous. If that wasn't there, then I would argue, and he had another 3,000 examples of that in his monthly life, his experience or her experience would degrade. And I think the same is true as if you could incorporate technology into it. So I want to build this future because it must be built that way as human beings, because people deserve environments that serve and not drain them. And I think to be fully human in a fully modern world requires some structural changes, because so much of today's world and society, whether it's our education, our physical environments, is built closer to the relevancy of the Industrial Revolution than it is today. I think today we're almost like human 4.0. In the 1990s, we're human 3.0 because that internet really changed our lives. And this 4.0 society is now really, we're at a renaissance point, and so much of it is still uncertain, but it's a really exciting time. Some questions I wanted to leave you with. What legacy will we leave? It's not another grid, concrete and glass that already exists. It's how can we breathe a layer of soul and spirit? I know these are esoteric ideas, but how can we build a living network of spaces that see us, serve us, and strengthen us as a collective and as individuals? It requires a lot of effort, investment, and trust to get there. This is our moment. The technology exists, the economics are compelling, and the human need is undeniable. So for developers, I think that response is to turn buildings into adaptive platforms. If they can think about it as a platform, they expand the envelope of their responsibility for their tenants and visitors. And then for investors is to back assets that appreciate with intelligence, not decay because of legacy. And from civic leaders is to create environments rooted in dignity, and not just in function and utility, but has some value add in this mutual transaction between us and society and government. So I say, let's build cities worthy of their people. We need cities that think, care, and evaluate human potential. With that said, the presentation is to an end. I will stop sharing my screen. I know we've made good time. I think there were a couple of questions. One of them was, what do I think the friction of change would be with younger generation who are more tech savvy versus the older generation? I think that's probably a good question. Factor over time. I do find one of the things with age, and I don't have a great answer to that question. I might need to think about it a bit more, but I think this idea that if we are, like some futurists are saying, likely to live much longer. Now, whether the person who's going to live to 1,000 has already been born now or not, to some extent, that's tongue in cheek. But if we're going to live to 150, 175, and that's going to be the new norm for this century, a lot of people are saying, just don't die in the next 5 years. So as long as you don't die in the next 5 years, you can probably be around for another 100. That's how fast science is moving. There are some real structural questions we need to answer and get right. And a lot of those structural questions at the governance and society level that impact real estate, retirement, aging, housing for elderly, income. There are certain things we need to think about. So I guess the question to that would be relative, but definitely adoption comes from, to your point on younger versus older, adoption comes from critical mass. There are some early adopters, and I think those early adopters in certain niche markets, whether that's younger or older, tend to act more, and then the rest cross the chasm with main society. And we're seeing that now. And then we hit critical mass, and it's everywhere. I think AI is hitting critical mass now with its consumption and user behaviors. Where is the model AI city you mentioned earlier? It's in Japan. It's by Toyota on the foothills of Mount Fuji. residents are already moving in. As far as I know, still falls in line with the same governance practices of Japan. There are some cities that are not just thinking about being smart, but they're ideologically differentiating themselves, where you have to change your name and choose an animal spirit's name to join the society. Those cities are coming up, right or wrong, it makes no difference. But the question is, do we want a city that is also ideologically different in its thinking as well, where whether it's thinking about its governance and currency and barter systems, etc. If people haven't come across it, there is a society called Damanhur in Turin in Italy, and I'll put it, the spelling may not be right, but I'll put it, and I have a few minutes, but Italians are free thinkers, like most Europeans are free thinkers. A couple of Italian engineers in the 1970s decided that they wanted to start their own society and said, let's start our own country. And they were engineers. They went to the mountains of Turin and started building caves, ecosystems within the mountains. They said, we want to celebrate all faiths, and it became a real tribute. Some of these caves are the size of a small stadium. It's incredible. They built their own currency and did some wonderful things as a community. They're not a smart city, but they're thinking about it differently. I think the future belongs to those who think differently. That said, Robin, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much to you, Mo. I can personally share that I felt a strong resonance and inspiration, also excitement about this vision. And thank you for bringing clarity to this emerging paradigm. And yeah, shall we see? There we go. So thank you to, so many buttons. Thank you to you, Mo. And if anyone else would like to host Davos webinar, we're curating fresh voices from the community. Feel free to apply here. Thanks so much for showing up and contributing with your presence and energy. We will see you all at Davos and the unDavos Summit 2026. Thank you so much.